Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from In Flames, Foregone, out February 10th on Nuclear Blast. The album has 12 tracks, 46 minutes in length, and this is the band's 14th full-length studio album. They are a Swedish melodic death metal band. From a design point of view, there's only one thing I didn't enjoy about this record, and that is the opening track, the intro if you will. Over 2 minutes, instrumental. It works well from an atmospheric point of view. It works well the first time you listen to the record because it helps set a little bit of a mood in terms of the underlying darkness that this album holds. But once you've listened to this album at least once and you know what's in store for you, you almost want to skip it and just get into the meat and potatoes of what the album offers. An album that's very dynamic, that's very engaging, very heavy, both musically and vocally, and with that underlying darkness allows some of the more melancholic, some of the more calm moments of the record to still stay connected with the overall design of the album. And this is important for a record like this, a record that changes or gives you different perceptions every so often. It doesn't allow you to feel like you are going through the same motions. It's a record that has a lot of life but never feels disconnected as well. So a great album, very intense. It always feels in your face, but at the same time very organic, almost put together in the same format that you would expect a set list at a live show to be like. From a soundscape point of view, the intensity and aggression musically and vocally become the cornerstones of this album, of how it sounds, of how it feels, of how it comes across. And you have to look at the sound experience as bringing in old In Flames sound with a more modern production. So you're going to have that intensity, you're going to have that aggression, that melodic backdrop that just drives every single track. That's always been there regardless of the era of In Flames, but I feel like this album is more connected to the past as far as some of those attributes are concerned. And then as far as the more modern side of the band, you're going to see that more with the clean vocals, with some of the more calmer songs, and also the production behind it. It's really the best out of both worlds. For any fan of the band, I think you could agree that those elements are what made In Flames great in the past, and it's what makes them great in the present. And if you can bring these two worlds together to create an album that unifies the eras of In Flames, I think you have a hit record on your hands, and that's exactly what they did with this album. I could not think of a better sound, a better experience, the way it comes across, how clean it is, how crisp it is, but at the same time melodic, aggressive, thick, pushing you through, offering you all of these different energies that are so important for an album to have those peaks and valleys that keeps you connected, that keeps you coming back for more. Within the sound, you obviously have to talk about the guitars. It's an In Flames record after all, but I want to talk a little bit about the bass and drums because they play not perhaps as an important role, but a very defining role nevertheless. The drums on this album are a little bit more balanced and they connect really well with what the guitars are doing, offering a little bit more texture, a little bit more thickness, a little bit more volume, making the sound more robust all around. Knowing when to drop to the background, when the song kind of calls for it, when the song has a different state of mind, a different mood, bringing you down, like I said, a little bit more of a melodic, melancholic vibe, and then picking you back up again when the intensity comes up, when the aggression comes up. So they are balanced from start to finish in terms of how they interact with the songs, not so balanced as far as the execution, exactly what you wanted out of a drums on a record like this. The bass surprised me. I was not expecting the bass to have as much impact as it does on this album, and sometimes direct impact in how it drives songs. I like it because I'm a big fan of bass on a record. I'm a big fan of a bass that pops but not necessarily gets in the way of everything else. It's really well placed in the mix throughout the entire album, knowing when it needs to come through, when it needs to be in the background in order to glue the tracks together, but also when it needs to drive the experience and give that underlining darkness that the album has a face. The bass is the face of that darkness. Now let's talk about the guitars. I think Chris's impact on this band is undeniable on this album. This album really showcases the impact that he has had as a guitar player on what this band can do. The solos are a perfect example of that. The way he plays the solos is a way that adds value to the way the songs are constructed. They're not just there because you expect a solo at a certain time. They're not just there because you feel the need to exercise your own ego. No, they're there because they're there to create value. They're there to add to the overall experience of the song, extend the track in some cases, add to the melodic undertones that the song has, or allowing the song to feel a little bit more explosive in a more linear, in a more brighter way. So you see that impact immediately on that front. But then you also see the impact of his style and his guitar playing on how thick the guitar sound is at times. It's not just heavy for the sake of being heavy. It's not just melodic for the sake of being melodic. It's both of those things, but with some thickness underneath it in order for the guitars to feel substantial. The guitars on this album feel substantial. They give force. They put volume. They put depth into the overall sound, combining extremely well, like I said, with the drums to really enforcing that idea and that sensation. Vocally, this album is phenomenal. I love the harsh vocal approach of Anders. He has a great tonality to how he stretches his voice, almost feeling like somebody's going in his throat and ripping out his vocal cords. And then obviously the clean vocals, always adding a little bit of that dark underbelly, or at least bringing that dark underbelly a little bit more into the forefront. He's able to navigate throughout the two extremely well throughout the entire album. If you ask me which one dominates the record, the harsher screaming vocals dominate the record more often than not. There are some songs that are more heavily dependent on the clean vocals, and those are the ones that create a little bit of a break, or at least a little bit of a slowdown that allows you to at least breathe a little bit, because this album feels so intense at times that you honestly need that room to breathe, specifically when you're going around the 45-minute mark in length. If the record was 36, 39 minutes, you don't need those songs. You can make it a balls to the wall record from start to finish. If you're pushing it around the 46-minute mark, you do need to have some songs where the mood comes down. After 2 or 3 heavy hitters, you need that little bit of a pause, a reprieve, so you can better understand what happened, where you are, and how you're going to navigate forward on this album. So he does that really well with his vocals, combining them extremely well on every single track, adding so much emotion to this album, an album that feels like it has a little bit of a deep meaning to him specifically, because I don't think you can hide that when you're singing in the way that he is singing on this album. Feeling very loose, feeling very organic, very natural, not forced, not pushed, not trying to be something that he is not. And this altogether creates what I consider the best In Flames album of the last 20 years, because it has both eras of the band. It brings the past into the present and showcases that the present mixed with the past could be a very bright future. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Bleeding Out, first break on the record. This is the 3rd track, so this is the first time outside of the intro. Then you have 2 heavy hitting songs, then this one comes in, and this one brings a little bit of that dark underbelly to the forefront, and also redefines what the melancholy and melody of this record is going to feel and sound like. The clean vocals become the protagonist of this track, and it's always the case on songs like this. But you still have some heavy moments at times, both musically and vocally, allowing the track to not feel lopsided. You still keep control of the song vocally with your cleans, but including those heavier moments make the song feel more together. It gives a more mature experience to how the track comes about. Now, this makes the song have ebbs and flows, but the ebbs and flows are not quickly one after the other, so you're able to navigate slowly throughout this track and with everything that it has, that it gives, and how it evolves. Next we have In the Dark. Thick guitar sound, heavy and thick all around, heavier vocals to match it. Once again, always working with a vocal style that better matches the overall sound on this record, and because the overall sound on this record is really heavy and thick, therefore you're going to get more of those vocals. Great solo in the first third. I was not expecting that, a little bit of a classic touch, but it works really well in order to infuse some melody into that overall thickness, into that overall heaviness. Then you have an acoustic bridge with clean vocals that allows that, once again, that underbelly of darkness to come a little bit into the forefront, and you start to perceive this song slightly different. The layers that the vocals have with the cleans in that bridge, in that moment, really define the methodology of how that song moves and how you perceive it and how you're going to feel towards it. Methodic, heavy riffing evolves from it and allows the song to become a little bit more of a dynamic track. The chorus is very melodic on this song. both musically and vocally, and that allows life to be injected into it, and you have a little bit of a climax created into the overall design of how this song comes together. Last but not least, definitely not least, Cynosure. This song is bass and vocals. I love it. I mean, it's such a unique track, different from any other song on this album. There's no song on this record where the vocals have this sort of control, have this sort of environment, this sort of pedestal to shine, and they're led there by great bass sound all around in the backdrop. That doesn't mean that the drums don't have an impact, that doesn't mean the guitars don't have an impact, but this is all about bass and vocals. This track is phenomenal. And the vocals also offer a different dynamic from everything else that we heard on the record before and everything else you're going to hear after. More electronic at times, a little bit more in the distance with that electronic sound, connecting really well at times with the stripped down effect that the track has before gaining some more volume, gaining some more sound, creating this up and down movement that the track has, where you're right at the basement for most of the duration of the song. Very dark, very methodic, very melancholic, and then this burst of energy, and suddenly you're on top of the roof. So you go from the basement to the roof in a matter of seconds, but that allows the song to still bridge itself extremely well, because you see the elements being added and then the explosion of the chorus. So it has a way of taking you from the bottom to the top. It feels like it happens a lot quicker, but it's a little bit more gradually built into it. But the experience that you have is one that it just happens in the blink of an eye, and that adds movement to a song that otherwise perhaps would feel like it didn't have enough movement. But it's all about the vocals, the tonality, the delivery, the approach, the style, that electronic approach, and then obviously the bass controlling the sound and dictating where it goes. Phenomenal track, really unique in the overall design of this album. This is it, In Flames, Foregone, out February 10th on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.